There's a lot of studies out there that show that businesses will fail 80% of the time is due to lack of really good analytics.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. Every single week, we get to bring amazing guests who are here sharing their real insights into the seven figure journey and their real struggles. And today is my privilege to introduce our guest, Jeff Huckaby. Jeff is co founder and CEO at Versalytics. Versalytics, as he'll explain further, has the ability to help in all things data analytics. So I was fascinated to hear what they do. I'm going to briefly summarize it because I think it's cool, and then I'm going to let Jeff talk about it a little bit more. But Versalytics has core data analytics capability, competency, knowledge, experience, and so they help as consultants to often large organizations who are dealing with very challenging data analytics problems. So they do consulting, but they also have software capabilities. So they have SaaS services, analytics, software that they help these companies with and they use in these engagements. And then they also, because they know the space so well, they help with recruiting people in that data analytics space. So, Jeff, welcome to the show, and we're excited to hear more about Versalytics.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. It's an honor to be here and be a part of this and share a little bit about our journey and some things that we've done well and some things that we've done wrong. Versalytics, we're an analytics SaaS company. We sell analytics solutions as a service. Uh, we really focus on unlocking what's called dark data. So, dark data, it was a term that was coined from Gartner a few years ago, and this is data and information that organizations have inside their organization, but they're not leveraging it for business insight. So, we focus on audio, let's say from a call center, and we use audio natural language processing. We can generate about 50 metrics, and we automate the entire process from recorded stereo audio. And like this conversation between you and me, if you were, if I keep interrupting you, the data would show that, and visually you can see that. You can see that after me interrupting you over and over again for 5 minutes, then you start screaming at me, Jeff, be quiet, listen to me. You can actually see that in the data and information. And then we've started to add large language models, which everybody's heard about, chat gpt and everything, to summarize calls, but also do empathy coaching and some other coaching as well. So we also focus on computer vision, industrial IoT devices, and then also text analytics. And then you mentioned the recruiting side. We help people, write a good job description. A lot of times owners will ask for the unicorn, and that unicorn, if you actually found them, they would probably, their salary would be where 800,000 a year, which is not practical. And so we help kind of right size the description for what's needed and make sure it matches what's in the market. Go out, recruit people, we test them, we guarantee performance for a period of years using our expertise in the space. And then, as you said, consulting, everything from ETL to data strategy to large database speed performance. And then we've got a lot of really good specialty around data visualization. And visualizing data is really important, particularly I think for new owners. Us as humans, we can see billions of data points, but if you think about a spreadsheet, if you have 10 columns of data, 10 rows of data, every column, every row you add, we as humans, we start slowing down and seeing the relationships of the numbers. But you and I could look at a billion different data points, see something kind of interesting and be like, oh, what's this? And drill down and click and then get to some sort of exception. So it's a fascinating time to be in analytics. And thanks again for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting what you're doing with Versalytics, but as you know, we're going to focus our journey, our time together on your journey as you've been building Versalytics. So this show has a two-part format. We're going to have you start with something that you've learned that might be beneficial to others who are in that early seven figures and are trying to grow. and then we'll shift to something that might be a struggle or a challenge in your growth that would be helpful to others. So let's start with a thing that would be useful to other business owners who are early in that seven figures, trying to grow their business, and you're in that spot and you've got experience. And what can you share that might be helpful to others?
Yeah, well, I obviously have a strong bias toward analytics. There's a lot of studies out there that show that that businesses will fail 80% of the time is due to lack of really good analytics. So I'm going to give we have something that we call our pillars of success. And these pillars are things that we've seen over the last 20 something years work at small businesses, medium business, massive enterprises. Okay. So, and these are trust in the data, speed in the data. Okay. How fast you get information in, how fast you get information out. Um, you know, giving data access to the right people. Okay. That really matters. And then interactivity. Every business question can't be a IT project. There was one company that went out of business. If I named them, you would know who they are. Um, their CIO, I was talking with her. She was a brand new CIO at this company. Every business problem took 3 years for the IT organization to build out the right analytics to answer. And sure enough, after that meeting, it was a good meeting, but they were focused on the wrong things. And I called my wife and said, "Hey, our son has a gift certificate to this company, right?" And she goes, "Yeah, why? Did your meeting go bad?" And I said, "I think they'll be out of business in 8 or 9 months." And sure enough, 9 months later, they announced that they went into bankruptcy. So context, putting the right data in the hands of the right people at the right time, and then having plans around adoption, data literacy. Not everybody understands data, and really from a leadership perspective down, and also from the bottom up, you have to have a culture of analytics, of making fact-based decisions. And it's great, and it's fine to take your gut and your experience and marry it with the data. But but also too, if that data is telling you something that's different than your gut, you know, you may need to reorient a little bit. And then last but not least, embedding advanced analytics into business operations and just kind of the day-to-day activities. Advanced analytics can't be something that is just a bunch of quantitative people sitting in a room doing really cool math. But those things, if your listeners kind of, as they continue to grow, look at those different areas and assess themselves. People that do well in those areas usually are doing well financially from a revenue perspective and from a profitability perspective.
Hmm.
And I haven't seen one company yet kind of break that pillar, if you will. So,
Yeah, so I'm super fascinated as I listen. I think this might not even be true. So I have this assumption in my brain I want to test with you. It feels to me like everything you said is way more applicable to a larger organization, but that's probably not even true. But that's what goes on in my mind, and I'm thinking, as a seven-figure business owner in that 1 to 3 million range. Let's say you got 6, 8, 10 people, maybe 15, 20 if you're getting closer to 3 million, and it's like, how much data analytics is required to run that size of organization. So push back on that a little bit, Jeff, and help us take those big ideas that you share and right size it for us for what it looks like in a smaller company.
yeah. So I think all of those elements matter in a smaller company. It's just the scale of data is going to be smaller. You're not going to need large databases. You're not going to need a team of people. You also may be able to use tools to do predictions. Like a Tableau, a Power BI. You can drag and drop. You can see a prediction. Okay, maybe and as you get a little bit as you continue to grow, you'll probably need some sort of data scientist to do to get it more finite. But there's tools available today, to the small business owner that, very easily you can drag and drop a prediction and you can see, hey, I'm going to sell, 10,000 widgets during this time period. And I think that one thing that I think smaller companies have, you know, definitely as an advantage is you actually can make all these things happen a lot faster than a lot of large organizations, just from cutting out all the bureaucracy. And sometimes you get a lot of people that make decisions based upon job security, whereas when you're a smaller company you can see that sometimes, but there's less of that at this level than what there is at the large enterprise. But if a business owner doesn't know their key metrics, if if their employees don't know the key metrics,
Right.
that was something I worked for 6 years at Tableau, and they were insanely transparent across the and they were a really small startup out of Stanford, and then wound up, multi-billion-dollar company, got bought by Salesforce for 15 billion. So saw that evolution, was part of that going from startup to large enterprise. But they were insanely transparent with all their information and data. If you were a developer, I could see how many errors did you have in your code. They could see how the retail vertical was doing. It's like, and so that type of transparency, it actually more often than not led to, if you saw something you could help with, you would get with that person and be like, hey, I saw that, our marketing sales or our marketing effectiveness is going down. I did something like this in the past. I think that, this could work really well. And in a small business, you need to wear 18 different hats all at the same time. And, I think that data transparency is actually critical, even for, this kind of journey that
Yeah.
the companies are in.
Yeah, I love that you brought it right back to you need to know your numbers, right? Like, what are your KPIs? Like that's the talk that businesses in this space get. And so, yeah, what are the numbers? What should I be watching? How do I know the health of my business? And not just me as the business owner, but then you extended that through your remarks about transparency to if everybody in the business can see clearly when things start to get off. We'll look at a dashboard in a car or a plane or whatever, an instrument panel, and you see the various gauges, and you get a feel for how well we're doing or which direction we're going or whatever, what dangers might be out there. And all of that's important information for people who are in seats, because that seat matters. Otherwise you wouldn't have hired them, right? So every role matters or you wouldn't have them there. And if they have the right information to guide their decision making, they're going to make better decisions. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe you could apply your super gut, your founder gut, to all these decisions, but you're not in all of those places at the same time, and you can't transfer that gut everywhere, even if it were right all the time. So people gotta see stuff that's happening, and so I appreciate you bringing it, to like this level, because I know you swim in really big organizations and help them with really complex stuff, but the principles are the same, and I think you're right.
Well, we actually apply the same to, nonprofits, small organizations, medium organizations, and the playbook is the same for
Yeah,
all. It's just the biggest, thing is usually the size of the budgets are bigger, and the size of the data is bigger, but everything else is the same.
yeah,
And your debt, and if you, as a business owner, if you want to change an element of your business, you know, publish those numbers publicly to everybody, not to shame, but
yeah.
say, hey, what can we all do to fix this? Okay. And
Yeah,
then
to
put some
inform,
sort of,
right? To inform, not to shame.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Never shame, never beat people up. That never works out well. But if you're transparent and you have the right compensation tied to those, you can move mountains pretty quickly,
yeah.
right? So
So cool. Okay, that was a fun first part of the time together. Let's shift gears to, as an owner who's working to scale that seven figure business of yours. What has been an impediment or a challenge, something that you'd like to address together today that might help others?
yeah, so we were very fortunate. I will say fortunate and unfortunate. Back in July of 2023, we actually signed a term sheet for $11.8 million with an investment firm, which was, incredible. We were excited.
Much
And
needed fuel for growth, right?
yeah, I mean, we were, at that, with that money, we were growing from 4 to 40 people, opening up offices in Latin America and Europe, and building out the engineering team and building out a proper, yeah, I won't say proper, but a dedicated sales and marketing function and an
Mhm.
accountant, so the founders can take off some of those hats. And we knew some people inside and outside of the investment firm. And make a very long story short, nothing that we did, but that investment firm kind of imploded. We were told in October that we weren't getting that investment. And we thought every day we were getting, a wire was coming in. And so, you have this euphoria. And then, and you start, putting together all these plans. You're like, this is going to happen 5 years faster than what we thought it was going to do. And, and all kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, you get a call from the CEO. Hey, yeah, we're not investing in any of the seven companies. We're going to redo all the contracts. The chief investment officer splitting with me, the chief investment officer, blah, blah, blah. And we had actually hired some people, some really good friends, people I worked with at Tableau that were incredible people. We laid them off the day before we laid them off. We had to lay people off on October the 17th. And I know that because it was actually the first time in my career that I had to lay somebody off. And just and I hate the term, hey, company, we're a family. No, you're not a family. I don't like that. But you can honestly and authentically care for people, and we cared for people. And I'd been part of layoffs growing up. My dad got laid off from a government job, and I remember him working out of state for a whole year. And so those are the things that go through my mind because I'm not thinking about our employees, but also their families. And what can we do to help them get a job or whatever, help out. And luckily, people, our team was insanely talented, and they were able to get jobs pretty quickly. But the day before, and I just turned 49 in February, so I was 48 years old, never had an anxiety attack, have dealt with some depression before in the past, but started having anxiety attacks on a daily basis. Didn't really know what it was really until I explained it to the doctor, and fit tightness, breath, and just nervousness and all kinds of things. And have had, just to be candid, an anxiety attack on a daily basis since then because we burned through a lot of our capital. It was almost like we had to start over again and start bootstrapping. I have an incredible leadership team. Everybody kind of chipped in and said, "Hey, pay us. Let's pay everybody. Basically the bare minimum, and let's just try to right the ship." And we're riding that wave where we're about to break free and finally begin to really start to focus on the business. But as I've talked with a lot of founders, and some that have exited, some that started companies, some that started companies and they failed, I hear a lot about loneliness, depression, anxiety, this constant kind of roller coaster, if you will. Every hour, when you're part of a startup, you could go from 1 hour on cloud nine, and then all of a sudden you're on cloud -9.
Mm.
It is just this constant kind of roller coaster. And I think that through mentorship, I think about through talking about this. I think realizing that some of this is normal, but it also, through talking through, sometimes you got to get help. And sometimes, as owners, we love to take things on. We love to kind of brute force things. We love to use grit and make through things, but I'm here today to say it's okay to pause and it's okay to go get some help. It's okay to talk to a psychiatrist or a therapist or both. And, and I think that mental health muscle, if you will, or kind of process is, something that we have to start to think about, not just as founders, but as society, as the same thing as being sick, having a cold, working out, things like that. And so, that's why I'm happy to kind of talk about that today and just kind of lay that out on the table because, I'm sure there's somebody listening on the podcast and they may be up or down, and one thing that that I've definitely learned over the last 2.5 years is, sometimes, when things are going well, it's not quite as good as you think it is, and when things are going bad, it's not quite as bad as you think it is. And sometimes we will, in our minds, we will elevate both of those extremes.
Mm.
And I think sometimes it's good to take a step back and just pause and take a deep breath and just realize that, hey, this is part of the journey, and part of the journey sometimes is reaching out and getting help from others.
Yeah, Jeff, I appreciate you being vulnerable and bringing a topic that's not easy for a lot of people to talk about. It's I certainly don't get many of our guests bringing up mental health when I ask. So let's talk about a challenge that you have in growing your company. And this challenge didn't have anything to do with the organization of the company or the team or the meeting rhythm or finding the right people. It's all internal, right? It's about your well-being, um, but it's super core, it's super essential to figure this stuff out if you're going to be able to grow successfully. Um, yeah, so I mean, wow, thank you for bringing what can feel like a heavy topic, but an important topic for people who struggle and don't know how to get the help they need, or um, yeah, might not even actually realize they're having a problem at first. They're just like, man, I can't quite seem to take on that emotional blow the way that I used to. Like, bad news can become really bad news when we're not as strong mentally or emotionally as we'd like to be. So I appreciate you bringing the topic up. As we jump into the topic here a little bit, usually this is a part where we do some thought partnering, or I even do some coaching. Um, I'm not a mental health expert, so I'm not gonna treat you in any way or coach you around that specifically. But I think we can have a good dialogue together. I shared before we started recording that we have some mental health challenges in my own family, and so I've had a front row seat to it for a long time. My spouse, some of my kids, and it's hard because there's a lot of stigma to that, and the world at large doesn't know. We don't have the language around it. We don't know how to be supportive with that. So yeah, let's talk about what have you found in your journey over the last 6-8 months that has helped you with, I guess, treating getting the help that you need, working with this.
I'd say probably the first thing, even outside of professional help, was just having a supportive spouse.
Mm,
And, my wife has been a rock through this. Even when I doubted myself, she was, my biggest cheerleader, standing behind me saying, hey, you've got this. You've done this a million times. You'll figure this out. We'll get through this. And, and that shouldn't be something that is taken for granted. I've got a really good friend of mine had his own company, and he had the opposite. And his wife, now ex-wife, every bad thing that happened in the business, she was just beating him up.
mm,
how can you be dumb to make this decision, blah, blah, and I was like, wow, it's like, holy crap, man, thanks for sharing that with me. But I think having a supportive family, spouse, significant other, I think is really important. I think having allowing yourself to go and say, hey, it's not a sign of weakness for you to go get help. And spend the hour a month, or week or whatever, to talk to somebody, because a lot of times they can just add needed context into what's going on. So then you go like, I don't have to fix all this by myself. I understand. Okay, yeah, it's not quite as bad as what I thought. I can make it through this, or giving you ways to cope, or to figure out how to, when you start feeling anxiety start coming on, or it could even be, maybe, there's, could lead to medication to help out, or to make sure, like, are you eating right? I get up in the morning, I don't like breakfast, I'm working, next thing I know, it's dinner time and I haven't ate anything. So I'm notorious for not taking care of like nourishment. And I get reminded by my therapist every time, hey, are you eating today? What are and it's like, okay, we got to do that. So, and I think making sure that, we get caught up so much in the grind of a startup, and it almost becomes this badge of honor, but you really have to, you should almost put yourself first and your health first and sleep first. And the sleep aspect is something that I learned. And I used to be the type that I try to just sleep 2 or 3 hours and do everything under the sun. And, then you get a little bit older and realize, I can't do that anymore. Um, but I've learned that if I really prioritize sleep, and I try to start winding down at 10 o'clock for sure. Last night, 10 o'clock, I was working on an important deck for some new business, and a very eminent investor, hopefully very eminent. And it was 10 o'clock. I said, it's time to wind down. I'll do it this morning. And got a good night's rest. And that also helps too, I think, with some mental state, and being a little bit more steady. And sleep is vital, for us to function, and to give our authentic self to our people, to our families, and most importantly to ourselves too.
You reminded me, I'm going to forget the name of the person who came up with it, but in our family's journey with mental and emotional health challenges, we learned this little theory called spoon theory. And it's simple. It basically goes like this: if your loved one, and this is from the perspective of the spouse or the parent who's supporting, but if your loved one wakes up with 5 spoons of energy in the day, and what is a quote unquote normal activity for someone like me who is neurotypical and has you know less challenge with mental or emotional things, like getting ready for the day might not cost me any of my spoons, but it might be a full spoon or two for my loved one. Anyway, at some point, fairly early on in the day, those spoons are all burned through. They're gone, and they don't have anything left. And some of us looking around are saying, "Well, why can't you keep up? What's going on here?" And meanwhile, they're tanking emotionally, mentally, and and so what you said about taking care of yourself first is so critical to being able to function, so that you can be the leader that you need to be for your business, and the spouse you need to be for your spouse, right? Like in
Oh
all the
yeah.
roles that you have, that self-care has got to be up there. When we don't prioritize it, we're basically putting everything we say we care about at risk. And that's the point I want to make. Self-care is not selfish. It allows you to be who you want to be in all the areas of your life that you're trying to be. And it's, I don't know why we trash ourselves. We put ourselves last in our health, in our relationships, in our finances. Sometimes we don't pay ourselves or whatever. And I'm not talking about seasons of we got to pull back like you describe. I'm just saying in general, we've got to practice self-care so that we can show up powerfully where we need to lead. Otherwise, yeah, everything else is at
Yeah,
risk.
and I also think it's really important for leaders to have when you have authentic relationships with your employees, and it's easy when you've got, you know, 20, 10, 20, 30, you get start getting 50, 60 type employees. It gets harder and harder, but you really need to know them on a human level. And to be looking for these types of signals, because you never know what somebody is going through,
Yeah,
and people with kids, it's, the world is tough and there's a lot of things going on right now in the world, and you just don't know what people are dealing with. And so the way you address people, the way you convey things, the way you are and the way you treat your employees, even though if you didn't intend for it to be bad, you have to think, hey, how's that person going to interpret this?
yeah,
And you need to be watching those signals over time. And sometimes, it's like, definitely going to mention who somebody was having some issues with somebody, health related, with a, a parent that was getting older. And it was like, hey, take off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I know you're working on these couple things, give that information to, a few of the others. We'll figure out a way to make it work, and get it. Go take care of that. Go step away. You know, we'll figure it out. Okay. And if we don't, it's not the end of the world. Okay. And it was just, be having that type of authentic relationship with somebody, and knowing that, hey, something was really off. And then having that trust, for them to actually say, hey, yeah, this is what's happening. And it's like, well, crap. Okay. Well, that's important. Go focus on that right now.
yeah,
You know what I mean? The business will be here 4 days from now when you come back. We'll figure out, we've got people that can step in and kind of help out, and, I think that just makes a stronger team. I think that makes a more, I say, emotional stable, but then also too, you know, an authentic team, just to communicate, and, for people to raise their hand, hey, I need some time off, or I need some help with this,
yeah,
you know, which is fine. When I worked for Salesforce, I thought they did a great job of, they would have these random Fridays that they would say, hey, everybody, go do something fun, go give to it, go work at a charity, go do your favorite hobby. Basically, don't, read email, whatever. And, and I think, I think startups could do that too, you know. Um, and, and sometimes that just extra day and reset can mean a lot to your employees. And so we try to do that sometimes. And, we actually have baked in quite a few holidays into our schedule, which is sometimes is hard as a consulting practice, but we communicate that up front with our customers,
yeah.
and, because that balance is really, really important.
Well, I know you're not a fan of calling the people you work with family, but when you just when you gave the example of, hey, we acknowledge you're a human being with real needs, and sometimes you just got to go take care of that, and we're gonna have your back. So you can create a level of team, a level of connectedness, a level of care, even if you don't use the family word, that that creates not just a one-time feeling of wow, they supported me, they got my back, but it creates a level of trust and I guess community that withstands a bunch of turbulence in the future, right? Like it creates something strong. So I and it's what's fascinating about that for me, Jeff, is that you saw a need in somebody else and you provided that support to them without even thinking about it. Hey, we're going to rally, we're going to do what it takes to help that person. But if we were to put let's turn the mirror now back to where we started this conversation. If I'm struggling, how do I give myself that same level of care, that same consideration? Oh, you personally need to go take care of something, and everybody else can cover this, right? Like somehow we got to figure out how to see that in ourselves and give ourselves that same level of support.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't. And I think as entrepreneurs and leaders, we feel horribly at that, right? And we just try to grit through it. Just and then sometimes you get to a point where you just can't,
Yeah.
and I think I did a study in undergrad, and one of the biggest problems why companies fail is because entrepreneurs will not rely on the expertise of their team. If they don't have if you're an entrepreneur and you don't understand marketing too well, but you think you do, sometimes you'll use your own guidance and judgment versus some of the marketers that you've brought in, and they're telling you, hey, we need to do something slightly different. You're like, oh, let's do this. But you see the same thing happening, I think, on the mental health side too, right? Where, hey, I'm a founder. I need to, I need to lead by example, and I can't show any weakness. And and that it's actually, I think, kind of counter to what a lot of things that are going today. And I think actually being authentic, showing some of that vulnerability, people are like, holy crap, and then I've seen that people are more open to share, and you develop that kind of, or you don't, you definitely develop more of a trust between your employees. And you know when you're starting a company and you're growing, you got to have a high level of trust between your employees, period. Okay, I mean, you guys are all in the foxhole together.
That's right.
You got good days, you got bad days. And I think that vulnerability allows for people to say, hey, you're human. And I've had particularly some younger people say, hey, I really appreciate you sharing that. I wouldn't have never thought that. And it's good to see a leader talk about that. That makes me feel better. It feels like I'm at a place that actually cares about me.
Yeah.
And so, and we, we try to extend that to our customers, our partners that we work with. It's not just our, so we want that level of consistency, not just with our employees, but everybody that we interface with. Because we have customers, and we have a lot of customers that we've developed relationships with, and then they start telling you, and if you're kind of vulnerable to them too, it takes a little bit of time to develop that level of trust. But you hear some of the same things too there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just take care of self, take care of team and family, but don't forget your customers. And and I think that there's some common threads kind of woven throughout a multitude of different things that we've talked about here. um, but then if you're able to do that, have that type of authentic conversation with your customers, they view you as more of a transaction. They view you as a partner, and that's always a good place to be as a company, as a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, when you elevate those relationships beyond the transactional, like it's way more satisfying, rewarding, fruitful, all of it. Yeah. Oh wow, Jeff, we could talk for a long time about this topic. It deserves more time, but our time is gone here. Let's do this for people who want to learn more about Versalytics or connect with you online in some way. Maybe they want to continue this line of conversation. What would be the best way for them to connect with you or learn about Versalytics?
You can go to versalytics.com, Versalytix. We had to have an edgy name. Versa means change, and then the lytics from analytics,
Hmm.
but we had to use an X to be edgy. Or they could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Profile name is, Jeff Huckaby, all one. And I think if you go to jeffhuckaby.com. It actually just takes you to my LinkedIn
Oh,
profile.
yeah.
Reach out to there. And and if there's somebody, I'm lucky enough, I mentor quite a few people in the analytics space and even outside. And I've got mentor or people that mentor me. But if you're listening and you're struggling, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, but if there's somebody that's listening to this podcast and you're struggling, you just need somebody non-judgmental. Yeah, feel free to reach out. You've got somebody here that will listen. And maybe would have a couple ideas that may be helpful. And sometimes it's good just to talk. But more than happy to do that. So.
Well, Jeff, you've been a great guest, and thank you for bringing a topic that doesn't get talked about enough, but it definitely is right at the heart of our ability to go out and achieve our growth goals in our business. If we're not well, business can't be well. So, thank you for being
Mhm.
here. For everybody listening, please do the things that help us get these episodes in front of as many seven-figure business owners as possible who are on this journey. Share, like, review, subscribe, do all those things. We want to get these episodes in front of everyone we can. Lots of great and valuable lessons from real people who are doing the real stuff in that seven-figure journey. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.